are lied to from cradle to grave.
How the hell do we have a man in the White House who's used at least 2 different aliases and several phony Social Security numbers? This is not a government. These are terrorists.
Is there any such thing as a sovereign citizen?
Yeah, so we were kind of laughing about that.
Get the hell away from our children!
That Article 5 enables the states to have independent sovereignty and to have it in a way where they are checking the power of the federal government, and to do it so that the Constitution is preserved.
And God did say, do not fear the destruction of the wicked when it comes.
We're going to have a Scooby-Doo ending.
Welcome to PNN Talk Radio, the Patriot News Network, hosting the American Voice, Citizens Initiative, I Am Sovereign, Conservative Commandos, and Resurrect the Republic at patriotsride.org. And here is your host. Hello and welcome everyone to Citizens Initiative with Charles Kaprowicz.
Friends, we thank you. We thank you for coming on board, and we thank you too for joining this State Legislators Round Table. Before I go too much, there we go. There was an echo in the background, and I was having trouble. This is Charles Kaprowicz. I am the National Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and also for the Countermand Amendment and the Sovereignty Amendment. We have tonight a full slate of state legislators from 3 different states, and we're going to have a very exciting, I think, time in sharing and commenting and trying to address specific problems that the legislators have in their states. Now, in our roundtable tonight, we have Mike Coons. He is our National Director and Alaska State Director. He's going to join us in the roundtable. We have Sandy Toth. Sandy is our National Executive Director out of Georgia, and she is also our State Director in Georgia. There'll be Kelli Gordon out of Texas. She is our National Coordinator and State Director in Texas. And there may be others who join, but at this point, they're the team that we will be using for addressing some of the questions and comments that the legislators will be making, and or others who call in. Now, those who are listening on the Internet, if you want to tell others to come and listen to this program live, go to pnntalkradio.org. Our audience has been growing, and it'll be, I think, a very exciting program tonight that you'll want your friends and associates to hear. There is a call-in number, but I'm not going to give it out tonight because our producer is sick, and I don't want to load up the switch system that she has. So suffice it to say, at pnntalkradio.org, there is a chat box. I will be monitoring that chat box, and you are welcome to use it and to talk to me as you would like. Now, I would like to make a few comments about the schedule that we have for the year. The State Legislator Roundtable has been growing. Right now, I think we have our Tuesday night evenings, which started out just a month or so ago at 2 hours a night. We had to expand it to 3. And we have our program pretty well filled all the way through the end of July now, or at least going into July and the end of June. So we are looking very, very strong as to what it is that we're trying to do, and the interest is coming back to us in a positive way. You can also go to countermands.us. Countermands.us is our website. You'll find a great deal of detail about the amendments that we work on, the Article 5 single-issue Countermand Amendment in particular. We have an auxiliary website that is for wounded warriors called outreachmilitary.us. And although that is not directly related to the program tonight, it is a website that we use to help fund, or at least provide some funding for wounded warriors. If there's a donation you want to make, you can find the donation button on countermands.us or on outreachmilitary.us. Now, I said all of that, and hopefully I said it well enough so that everyone understood. But I would like now to introduce the guests that we have tonight, and I will give some explanatory comments in a moment. Senator Leslie McGuire was intending to be here tonight and was unable to make it, and so she has asked if Brett Hubert, the Chief of Staff, would sit in for her. and we will be hearing some comments from him in a moment. Senator McGuire has an incredible background. I was looking at Alaska State House Representative activities, committees, and various responsibilities that she has, and they are just extraordinary. So we are grateful for her participation, and even though she won't be here tonight, she will have a chance to be back sometime, I believe, in late September or early October. We will have each of the 50 states participating in this one more time by the end of the year, and it'll give them a chance to think the comments that we're making and questions they've had, to think them through more carefully, and then when they come back on board in about 2 months, they will be able to, or 3 months, they will be able to address some of those issues or new ones that they have coming up. Now, we also have a gentleman, a Representative Wes Keller. Wes is, of course, out of the state of Alaska, and I didn't mention the fact that Senator McGuire is an Alaska senator, and she is one of the leaders up there in the state. Wes Keller, Representative Keller, is also from Alaska. One of the things I'm impressed with all of you folks from Alaska is that it is very clear that you are citizen legislators, and you take your work very seriously, and I'm sure you pay a very heavy price to serve your people in that state. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm sure that my people are at the same time. But Wes has a very wonderful background. He's on several committees, and he is on education. He's concerned with military, and he has been involved with residency issues. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. He has mostly been with family issues, education issues, I'm sorry. You know something, I'm reading this thing wrong. Wes, I'm terribly sorry. I'm misreading this thing, and I'm not doing a proper job of it, and I'm going to just take a few moments to make sure that I cover your background properly. He is a Citizen Advisory Commission on federal areas. That's 1. Governor's Council on Disabilities and Special Education. That's 2. Chief of Staff for Alaska Senator Fred Dyson. That's been part of his background. He's been the staff chair for the National Conference of State Legislators. And so he has a very, very powerful background, and he is presently serving in the Alaska Legislature as the representative from District 7. So welcome, Wes, and we will have you sharing here in a few moments also. We also have Shirley Hughes. Shirley, are you there now?
Shirley's not on yet.
Oh, she's not on yet. Okay, well then she may be getting on here shortly. And
yes.
She's from District 8. She's a representative from Alaska, and she also has some very extensive history here that we don't have time to read, but she is obviously more than a legislator, and she is a very accomplished woman. And then we have Representative Bill Stoltz, and Bill, of course, is from Juneau, Alaska, and he is going to participate in the program tonight. He's a lifelong Alaskan. And his occupation is Alaska State Legislature staff, a former Alaska State Legislature staff, and he is also serving on several committees. Now, one of them is the Finance Committee. He is also the vice chair, for which he chairs. He is the vice chair at the Finance Committee, and then he is a member of another Finance Committee in 2003. And he was also a member of the Legislative Council Joint Committee in 2004. So he has excellent background in these areas, and he brings a lot of experience to our program tonight. Now, before I ask for comments or questions, I would like to just qualify something. The State Legislator Roundtable is for the benefit of legislators and their states. It's for the purpose of addressing issues that are important to them and their states. We have a growing audience. We have, I think on one evening, we had probably 20,000 people who were listening, plus the rebroadcasting grew to 58 radio stations that were rebroadcasting the program live into the local radio markets. And I have no idea what the number that represents, but 58 times whatever. And so our program is growing. For that reason, we want to cover all 50 states and give every state legislator as many as them in every state and as many legislators as possible opportunities of expressing their concerns. When the legislators comment, they will do so based on what is of interest to them and if it's a comment or a question in the roundtable, we'll participate and we will address it. If there's a way in which we can address it through the Countermand Amendment and or the Sovereignty Amendment, we will do that also. But its focus is primarily on the concerns that the legislators have in their states. Now, anyone out there in the one of the legislators who has joined this conference, first of all, before I invite you to make a comment, how about Brett? Would you like to make a comment, an introductory comment, before we go any further?
Charles, thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Kaprowicz. Thank you and the Citizens Initiative for taking the time to put this effort together and put this roundtable together. I'm sitting in, as you said, for my boss and Wire. You'll find that I'm a poor substitute. She has been quite a dynamo in the legislative process and the Citizens Legislature now for 14 years. Chair of the Rules Committee, et cetera, but you'll find you're going to be very well served by your other panelists from Alaska, Representative Stoltz and Keller, and if Representative Hughes joins us, I think you'll find that they're like-minded on a number of the issues, and certainly the issues that you've slated for the general discussion tonight. I have a very interest in your movement. I'm kind of at the preliminary research stage. I'm still being educated, so I'm looking forward to this evening. You'll find my boss is ahead of me, but I'm quite used to that, actually. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll be happy to mainly listen, and I'll participate if it's appropriate.
And feel free to just stay online, Brett. You're welcome to listen through the whole program. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Wes and Bill, but first, Wes, would you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background on the work you're doing up there in Alaska?
Yeah, this is Alaska.
Who is this, Shelley?
Yeah, this is Shelley.
Okay, Shelley, you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little history on your work up there in Alaska.
Oh, well, hello. I thought I was talking to an operator. Is the whole group on?
No, we are on the program right now. We have Brett Hubert, we have Wes Keller, Bill Stoltz, and yourself.
Okay, well, happy to be joining you. Sorry, we tried calling in about 4 times. I'm glad we finally got through. I'm Shelley Hughes. I represent the Greater Palmer area, Mat-Su, neighbor district with Representative Keller, Representative Stoltz, and am new to the legislature. I was a freshman legislator this last session, and working with Mike Coons and hearing about the different things, and then also supporting the different things that Representative Keller and Stoltz have done, and want to become more involved and understand the importance of this particular effort. I know there are a number of them out there, but I like the grassroots aspect of this effort, and so I wanted to learn more about it. Mike was good about providing materials. I read through about the Countermand Amendment, and I'm interested in that, and so here I am.
Shelley, I'm delighted. I'm sorry you had some trouble getting through. Our producer has been sick, and as a matter of fact, she just managed to get the program on the air tonight. We are airing. It's going live. There are many radio stations that are rebroadcasting us into the local markets. So undoubtedly we have a good-sized audience. But unfortunately, she got very ill, and she left the studio in order to attend to herself, and so she was not able to handle your call as it came in. So hopefully we'll have no other flare-ups, and everything will go as it is intended. Okay, Wes, give us a little feedback on yourself.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for the opportunity to be involved. Let's see. Currently, I'm chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and a couple things. Well, number one, I want to say it's always very encouraging every time I interact with anybody working on Article 5 initiatives because there seems to be, like you already indicated, a growing interest and a growing awareness. And some of the things that we've done, that I've done, I myself and Senator Fred Dyson went to the Mount Vernon Initiative. I'm sure you have spoken of and heard of. And another one is I chair the CACFA, which is Citizens Advisory Commission on Federal Areas. 66%, I think, of Alaska is owned by the federal government. We have a lot of co-management stress interactions between when the state is trying to manage and the federal government trying to manage, and so there's clashes here along with the other states, and we're finding more and more people interested in that aspect of it in the western states, because there's a number of western states that have a large part of the acreage that is owned by the federal government. So there's issues on that. So that's what CACFA works on. Last summer we had a summit called the Federal Overreach Summit. And if you remember CACFA, C-A-C-F-A, if you're interested, there's literally hours of testimony of various people in the state that have encountered issues, trying to do the things laid out by state law that have been, run into problems and conflicts and contradictions with things that have come across in the federal government. So there's a lot of good information on the CACFA website, and I would certainly direct you there. Also, I sponsored a bill up here on the balanced budget amendment last year that uses the compact approach, I'm sure you're aware of, to try to address the Article 5 issue. And as Mike knows, Mike and I have spent hours talking about this, it's not a competition who's going to get across the finish line here first. I do and encourage and am excited about any initiative there is to call attention to, citizens and states being involved in returning state sovereignty using the Article 5 approach. So thank you for including us here in the Citizens Initiative, and so we can learn about your process.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent overview of your work and what you're trying to do in Alaska. And you hit the nail on the head in a number of those issues, and they do connect with us quite well. But at any rate, I appreciate that, Wes, and we will talk more in a moment. Now, is Bill still there?
Yeah, Bill's here. This is Bill Stoltz.
Yes, Representative Bill Stoltz, give us some feedback on yourself, please.
Well, first I have to correct. I'm not from Juneau. I work there a couple months a year, but I'm from represent the Mat-Su Valley and Chugiak.
Okay.
Neighboring districts to my good colleagues Wes Keller and Shelley Hughes. Share a lot of the same values. I can't think of too many things, if any, differ on. Many of the things that Wes talked about are things I'm also a sponsor or co-sponsor of. The Balanced Budget Amendment. We helped revive the Citizen Board on all areas to continue to assert federal rights. There's state rights against federal encroachment, which are not just an occasional dalliance. They're a steady diet. One of the things we've done, I chair the budget committees for Department of Law for 10 years, and don't always like to fund lawyers, but in this case, we've had administrations that have been willing to we have a section in our Department of Law which is called the Statehood Defense budget section, and that's fighting the federal government and NGOs, which are in this administration are almost distinguishable from some of the federal personnel there. And if we're not there litigating for our state's rights and our sovereignty, we're going to have NGOs and their brethren in the current administration negotiating our sovereignty and our rights. So that's been a big initiative that we've pushed, working with the Parnell administration and prior. I don't always take the lead, but given that I'm in the leadership on finance, but very quick to join in what Wes especially has pushed through his leadership on many national organizations as well.
Thank you very much, Bill. Representative Bill, that was excellent, and I appreciate the fact that there, if everyone was the chief, there'd be no one to get the job done. So the fact is that you are fulfilling some responsibilities that others can't is wonderful, but leading at the same time. So I appreciate your comments and your introduction. Now, we have probably 40 minutes before the hour that has been assigned to Alaska is finished. Very briefly, the Countermand Amendment that we are working on, it's under Article 5, is a single-issue amendment called the Countermand Amendment, And it has two documents, actually three, but one incorporates two. There is the application, which is for Congress to make, for the state legislators to make a call, to make application on Congress, directing Congress to convene a convention. And when 34 states reach that point, it becomes a mandate. Congress must convene the convention. There's great authority for that, and the fact is that the idea that Congress makes the call, even though that is a word used to define their duties, it is the state legislatures who have the authority to direct them to do that. And if they don't, then under Article 5, once the states have completed their 34 applications, they would have the authority to convene the convention on their own because they would have met the mandates required of them in the Constitution. The second part of it is the amendment itself, the Countermand Amendment. And then there's third is the delegate resolution, all of which are part of a trifold, you might say. The amendment itself empowers the state legislatures under Article 5 to countermand, disallow, and rescind any law or regulatory ruling or government or non-government mandate that adversely or in some other way is burdensome to the states. And with 30 states, that law is rescinded. Now, that would apply especially to things like the Bundy Ranch thing with the BLM. It will apply to up in Alaska to issues that you have with roads going up into the interior. It has areas of application that would apply to your energy resources, how to use them, how the EPA is governing your state right now, how it is that they have control over so much of the state. All of these things can be addressed with the Countermand Amendment. And when 30 states are in agreement that that particular law or ruling or agency, EPA or BLM or even the IRS, if they're doing something that is burdensome to the people of that state, this amendment would allow the states to act and rescind that particular law. So it is a powerful, powerful tool. But there's one other aspect to it, and that is this, that once the Countermand Amendment has been ratified by the state legislatures, now there is an enforcement provision. We all know that the federal government, in many cases, picks and chooses. The Countermand Amendment is definitely bipartisan. It fits every state. But at the same time, it does give special emphasis to the problems that are in, let's say, the immigration states or the western states or the energy states, the coal-producing states, the oil-producing states. There's a certain value that those states will have with this countermand. And since the federal government oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes will not enforce certain rules and laws that they are obligated to enforce, or they'll put a twist or an interpretation on it that, in fact, will make their actions very timid at best. In this amendment, there is an enforcement provision in Section 5 and 6. And what it actually says is that if the federal government does not prosecute intentional violators of the amendment, then the states can do so after 90 days from the alleged violation under state laws. Now, and then with extradition treaties and so forth that the states can have between themselves, there's a lot that can happen there, only because the states will have the enforcement provision. And so those in the federal government who are inhibiting the application of this amendment or the provisions of this amendment in a way that is detrimental to the states, it can be addressed by the states themselves. So those are important provisions, and I wanted to get those things clarified. Lastly, the delegate resolution, which is the amendment itself, is part of the delegate resolution. And that delegate resolution binds the delegates who are going to the convention so that the delegates are ambassadors of their state legislatures. They are not free agents. We are deeply, deeply, deeply concerned that the state legislatures do not abdicate the sovereign authority that they presently have under Article 5 by allowing anyone, Congress or the courts or the executive agencies of any kind, or even the delegates, from assuming authority that they don't have under Article 5. Article 5's primary purpose is to allow state legislatures to address egregious wrongs that are being suffered by their people when the federal government won't address them. And in so doing, the state legislatures are limited to proposing amendments. They are not authorized to start a new constitution. the idea that the con proponents or advocates have been saying for 30 some years that a convention could become an open convention and a constitutional convention could be conformed. All of that reasoning is wrong, in my humble opinion. The fact remains that an Article 5 convention has two restrictions. One, to propose amendments, and two, to make sure that it's perpetual, so that the legislatures are responsible for protecting it and not destroying it. The delegates who went to that constitutional convention are not the same kind of delegates that you guys send to an Article 5 convention. Totally different types of responsibilities. One is to propose amendments, and the first one was to start a new government. So that's what they tried to avoid, because the issue of sovereignty was very much part of the Constitutional Convention's deliberations, even from the very beginning. They were trying to protect nation-state sovereignty. And they did that in Article 5. And how they did it is they restricted the unanimous vote requirement under the Articles of Confederation, and they allowed 3/4 of the state legislatures to ratify amendments. Now, there are a number of other things that we can say, but what I would like to do with that introduction on my part, any of you gentlemen would like, or ma'am, would like to make a comment or a question, we would most welcome it. Did anything I say make any sense? Let me start out there. Or did I say too much?
Well, this is Bill Stoltz. The Countermand amendment itself seems pretty straightforward. I got to tell you, I almost reading through the whole process and the template or the boilerplate language, I could see just a challenge getting that through even the first committee of referral. I mean, the multi-pages and the complexity of it, getting it through a state legislature, knowing our House of Representatives, not to mention the Senate, where I hope to be next year. But just the complexity, and is that are the provisions and the text of that inviolate, or how does that, in setting those standards? Because it is a fairly lengthy and complex resolution that would be passed, although the Countermand seems to be a pretty simple concept.
Well, they are not inviolate. They can actually be changed. It's really a template for you guys to decide how you want to use it. The amendment itself, we would like to think that you won't change, only because and you can if you wanted to, but it is covering some issues that we have thought through and worked through. And I've been in the Article 5 amendment work for 40 years, either through Congress and or state legislatures. And not that I am a great scholar in this. I guess I am a scholar in that sense, but the fact is that I have had a long history in this. And my concern has been from the very beginning that the state legislatures do not surrender their sovereign authority. I have been deeply concerned about that. I don't think that we can pull this nation out and preserve our constitutional republic if you guys don't hold on to your sovereignty. And so it's with that focus in mind that we wrote that delegate resolution. And the purpose of that delegate resolution has a number of aspects, one of which is it has instructions for the delegates to follow under contract to organize the convention. Back before the Constitutional Convention was convened, there was a big debate among the states as to how they would measure the votes and count the votes at the convention, even before it started. And the problem was, would the populous states be able to have more votes than the smaller states? And there were enough smaller states to insist that the larger states have to allow one vote per state. So it became a republic. Now, that was even before the Constitution was written. And a fellow by the name of George Wythe, who became one of the founders, was responsible for putting together some rules for that first convention. But that convention was organized as a result of this initial presentation by him and his committee, not because of convention experience that happened before, because the states did have perhaps 30 or more different conventions to settle different disputes between the states prior to the Constitutional Convention. But that didn't govern, and there was no legal precedence to govern it because there was no government to control the Constitutional Convention. So the point is that the issue of whether it would be in the form of a Republican form of government or population, some kind of modified democratic vote, that had to be settled before the convention started. The delegate resolution that we're proposing gives instructions to the delegates that tells them exactly how to organize the convention. It doesn't give them the option to decide it should be convened this way or that way. And then it also tells them it has to be formed so that each state gets one vote. And it shows them how to organize so that the state legislatures, the delegates rather at the convention will have instructions on how to make sure that the organization of that convention is based on one vote per state. And then it also instructs the delegates how to have a majority vote. Now, why is all this important? There's a big debate that has been going on for probably 5 or 6 years. The Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force was part of it. In the early days, I'd been part of it. And it's been picked up by the COS people and by the CFA people, and certainly the John Birches have looked at it and have had their opinions and so forth. But it goes something like this, that the delegates who go to the convention are the deliberative body. They're the ones that are to decide the issues as defined, or at least as described to them by the state legislatures. And so given that assumption, what that means that the delegates become the operative body. They become the deliberative body. But you see, the authority to be a deliberative body is in the state legislatures alone. It's nowhere else. Now, the state legislatures could delegate responsibilities, as some of our church denominations do when they send delegates to conventions and so forth. But the fact is, when they go to a convention under one of these denominations, they don't go to change the rules of the denomination. They go to vote on particular agendas that are presented by the leadership, and then they decide if it's yes or a no. Well, that's the same type of authority that the legislatures have in sending delegates to the convention. So everyone else but us is simply saying that the state legislatures are the deliberative body with the sovereign authority under Article 5 to define the convention. All of the others say no, the delegates are. That bothers me. And it bothers me because if they win, they wind up allowing the delegates to have a certain degree of sovereignty that otherwise is assigned to the legislatures in Article 5. So our delegate resolution is to present it. And by the way, I'm getting an echo here. They might not have their mute button on. If you have a mute button and you're not speaking, please use your mute button. I believe you can use *6 if you don't have a mute button. And if you want to talk, of course, you can unmute it and then we can talk. So the delegate resolution's primary purpose is to allow the delegates to act as ambassadors for their legislatures, not as free agents. That's the first thing. The second problem that we have, fellas, the honorable legislators that we have on this phone, the second problem is Article 1, Section 10. You're going to hear a little about that at Mount Vernon because they have it as part of their agenda. A lot of the material in that agenda, I believe, has come from material that we have disseminated. But that's not the issue right now. The point is that Article 1 prevents you from having interstate agreements between one another, different states, without the consent of Congress. We're trying to keep Congress out of the picture. That's why we don't agree with CFA's approach, even though I know you guys have passed that. But the problem that we see is the moment that you allow Congress to decide if a compact between the states is needed, Congress becomes part of Article 5. And the other problem with that proposal is that the governors of the states have to sign it because it becomes a process. And in that process, it has to follow certain rules. Now, the governor's part of Article 5, neither of which are the case right now. And so what we're trying to do is to help the legislatures realize that Article 5 is theirs alone. They are the total sovereign body with the limitations of proposing amendments and the perpetual aspects of the Constitution, which they're obligated to protect. But they define everything. They tell Congress what the rules are. When you write an amendment and ratify it, the Supreme Court has to follow it. You have tremendous power. You actually can reclaim this and restore this constitutional republic just through 26 states. So with the delegate resolution, what we're saying is we would like to have every state that is interested in completing an application on Congress for the Countermand Amendment or the Sovereignty Amendment. Right now the advanced amendment is the Countermand. We would like to have every one of them also to pass a resolution, not an act, not a statute, not a bill that requires the governor's signature, but a resolution that allows that approves the amendment which is in the delegate resolution and the instructions for the delegates. And when 26 states sign that delegate resolution, now that convention can be convened in an orderly fashion, and it can be done in a way that will allow states' rights to prevail. Now, can you imagine California may have 50, if you go based on the number of representatives we have in Congress, California, let me rephrase it, the Congress could summon 534, 35 delegates to this convention. The state legislatures would appoint them. Congress can't tell you what to do with that. Now, can you imagine if you go to the convention, there are no rules, there are no instructions as to how to organize, and now you've got 50-some that come from California and you've got 4 from Montana. And they haven't even decided if you're going to function as an Article 4, Section 4 convention, giving each state a Republican form of government with 1 vote. That hasn't even been decided yet. And now you're going to have this free-for-all between politically charged delegates who are going to just ramrod everything they can through that in order to get their way. There are people on the left right now are plotting to take this concept, this Article 5 convention, and turn it upside down. They're already plotting that. And they're trying to find ways to make sure that the convention goes in their direction. And their objectives are not ours. We want to preserve the Constitution. We want to preserve state legislature authority. And they do not. They like federalism. They like the idea that we could eventually become an international federal nation. I've had some that have been causing me trouble trying to say that I'm interfering with their plans for a federalist government that is run like the United States but at an international level. And I'm sitting back and I say, how did I get into that debate? But that's the kind of stuff that we're up against. And believe it or not, you folks are in the middle of it. And you're in the middle of it simply because Article 5 under this Constitution is the vehicle that allows it to happen. Now, so if that delegate, go ahead. I'm waiting for you to speak. Yes,
Charles,
go ahead.
This is Kelli in Texas.
Yes.
Can you hear me
Kelli.
okay?
Go ahead, Kelli. I can, yes.
Well,
this line is now muted.
And I've been muted.
Okay.
I guess the other group, from what I see, is that they talk a very good game. But I'm not sure that they know the actual process and method, the way to convene the actual Article 5 safely. They're confusing our state representatives. They're muddying up the water, and they're painting themselves into a corner along with our representatives. The trick is, it seems, that our state legislators, they must retain control of this Article 5 strategy from the very application all the way through to the ratification, never, ever abdicating their authority under that Article 5. If we can help them understand to pre-approve the proposed amendment text, along with the corresponding delegate resolution that's going to bind that delegate to their state legislators, it's going to control and define the duties of those delegates so that they know exactly what it is that they are there to do before they ever sit down at the table. Our legislators need to keep control of those delegates No doubt.
Yes.
One vote, one state, that's going to keep it equal. That way it doesn't matter how many delegates. And as you said, imagine 500 politically charged egos who are secretly comparing themselves to our founders, sitting down trying to hammer out a remedy. Each and every one is positive that they and they alone have that right answer.
Well, Kelly, that's well said.
That's asking for chaos. It's asking for mischief. As you said, we do have those in there that are just trying to figure out a way to use this against us. But if our delegates are bound to our state legislators, there's no room for a rogue. If they only get one vote and the state legislator already knows what the legislature knows what it's already going to be and they vote differently, well, they violated their oath and they're going to have to, they're going to have to pay for that.
Thank you.
The main thing is that they do not our state legislatures do not abdicate that authority over to a delegate. The delegates are not going to be in there writing the amendment. They're going to be sitting down discussing the amendment. That the state tells them, look guys, this is what we want you to do. Here's the resolution. You are not to discuss anything that is not on that resolution.
I want to let me add something.
Okay.
That you've said. You'll have to mute your phone up because I am picking up an echo. All right. Now, was it you, Wes, who had asked the question about the delegate resolution, the size of it?
No, I did not, but I would like to know, this is Wes, I'd like to know who was just speaking. I missed that.
That was Kelli Gordon. She is our state director out of Texas.
Thank you. I just missed that when she began to speak.
Now, on this delegate resolution, I guess that was you, Bill, who had made comment on the size of the delegate resolution and the difficulty you'll have to get it passed in the state legislature. The problem that we have is that there are a lot of very critical points that need to be addressed in a document that will bind the delegates to the legislature, and at the same time not violate the restrictions of Article 1, Section 10, which prohibit interstate agreements. Now, back 3 years ago, when we had some conversation with Rob Nadelson, who is the scholar, the conservative scholar who is actually giving some wisdom to COS, he had agreed with us that an interstate agreement, that is in the sense of using it as an interstate agreement to bind the states and the delegates, would violate Article 1. And he said, change the title. And so I took his advice. Now, he's changed his title. He went in a different direction. He's over with COS now. But the fact is that I called it a delegate resolution, and then we started to build the contract around that delegate resolution rather than an interstate agreement. So what that did, it allowed the legislatures to control the delegates without violating Article 1, Section 10. That became a critical component to this whole strategy that we're advancing. Now, in that delegate resolution, it is possible that the states could modify it and could shorten it and take some of the language out. But what we don't want is for the states to think that it's not a critical document from the standpoint of the objectives that they are binding their delegates to. And if they have a better way of doing it so that the amendment is approved by them and 26 other states, then we're all for it. We're not the agency that is going to be, let me rephrase that. We're not the group or the agency that's going to be controlling this legislative process. We're citizens. We're concerned citizens. We consider ourselves to be patriots. And we have some ideas that we think are important. And we're trying to influence the state legislatures in understanding the issues in a different way. And our focus has always been state sovereignty. And so given that, and Article 5 providing that sovereignty, this delegate resolution is the key for proposing safe, quick, and successful conventions. I think with this delegate resolution, a convention would probably be just 5 or 6 days. And it'll be over. And you'll now have a convention that will send the amendment back to the Congress, then with instructions to send it back to the states for ratification. And I think it'll be ratified. It's a bipartisan amendment. It really does have teeth for states' rights. Whether you're on the left or the right, the fact is that this is a way for your state to retain states' rights. And so for all of those reasons, and maybe a few more, the delegate resolution is critical. And it's critical, and if it does create problems in getting it passed in the legislatures, I don't know that I have a simple answer, because I don't know how to make it a simple document and accomplish the important things that it's trying to do. I guess the main thing would be to educate the legislators to understand why it's so important, and get them to see that modifying it in a safe way is okay, but making it a wholesale change so that it's simplified and it becomes kind of a soundbite so legislators are comfortable with, that won't work. It's not an advertising piece. Okay. Bill, does that answer your question or comment? Bill Stotz, are you still there?
This is Shelley. I don't know if Bill is still around, but I have a comment. Or a question and a comment, and
yes.
One of the questions I have, has this been before any state legislatures as yet? Has it been heard in the committee, and have you heard how it has gone? That might help us know whether it needs to be reworked a little bit. And secondly, in reading the Countermand Amendment, I was concerned by Section 3, what talks about from the time the initial countermand is issued by a state legislature, the other legislatures shall have 180 days to complete the process. Otherwise, you only have 180 days, and I'm very concerned that would not be enough time, because if it were started, say, March, April, and you've got 6 months, legislatures wouldn't be meeting. Some legislatures meet every other year, and I just could see that 180 days isn't long enough.
Well, you're right about that, and it's 18 months, by the way. We had a document earlier that probably had 180 days in it, and it was supposed to be changed on everything. But if you go to our website, Countermand's, yeah, it's 18 months to get a countermand completed between the states.
Yeah, okay. Shelley, I'm sorry, I must have given you the wrong one. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
And you're right. 180 days would not be enough time. So we understand that.
Can you talk to us then about of the materials you've prepared? What has anything yet been heard before a committee? Has anything passed any legislative bodies yet at this point?
No, but the fact is we do have 4 states right now that are considering sponsoring it, including Alaska. There's West Virginia. We've had a commitment for sponsoring it there by the senior delegate, a senator up in North Dakota. We also have a senator down in Louisiana, and we have about 4 or 5 other states that are looking like they're going to sponsor it too. As to what happens within the legislature, that we're just beginning. Now, last year, remember, we've been at this for a long time. And by the end of last year, we had formulated our strategy with an amendment called the Sovereignty and State Rights Amendment. In it, there were 4 issues. And we have always stuck to the idea of a single-issue amendment, but somehow we were persuaded that we needed, because of the urgency of the hour and so forth, we needed an amendment that would include some of these other issues. And so we conceded and we said, okay, let's do it. Well, at the same time we decided to do that, and we were beginning to advance that in the states, COS came into the picture and began to present their 3 subjects, their 3 general subjects, and created some real issues for us, because now we were not able to focus on one issue, or the 4 issues, I should say. We had to also contend with their strategy and how it is in conflict with ours. So what we had decided to do is go back to the single-issue amendment convention, and that was in January. And we took out of the Sovereignty State Rights Amendment the Countermand Amendment and the Sovereignty Amendment. We made them 2 different amendments. And the Countermand Amendment was just introduced to the state legislatures probably no earlier than the end of February, the beginning of March. It's been relatively recent. And in that, we put together this roundtable concept to help educate the state legislators on this strategy. And we've had excellent responses. it's been no question that there's been an excellent response. And it looks to me like by the end of the year, we will be well on our way to those 34 applications being completed. That's what I think will happen. Now, if we do that, then I believe that by the middle of next year, we will have the 34 states completed. They will have sent to Congress. Congress will have no more than 60 days to convene the convention. That's part of the application, which you will also find at the countermand.us website. And then once the convention is convened, that could be convened probably toward the third quarter of next year, if we're very fortunate. But the fact is that once the convention is convened, it is our hope that we could have everything, the legislatures could have everything done at the convention in 7 days. And simply because it's all been prearranged. And as long as the legislatures understand they are the deliberative body making these decisions, then the delegates only have to do the organizing of the convention and the final vote on the amendment itself. And they don't have any issues to be debating because it's all been pre-approved by the legislatures. The COFS approach is a different approach. And what they have done is they've said, look, we want to do things based on subjects, general subjects. And with that, they have three general subjects, of course, reigning in government, which could have multiple meanings. It's another issue, but the balanced budget is certainly part of it, and then also term limits. And so under any one of their general subjects, you could have 12 or more sub-subjects. And what they're trying to do now, because they know they've got a problem with controlling the delegates, they're aware of that. And yet at the same time, they see the delegates as free agents. They don't want to give up that idea. So given those two factors, they have a problem with trying to find a balance. And so now when the state legislatures send delegates to a convention under the COS concept, however it's devised by Mount Vernon, it's going to allow the state legislatures, the delegates rather, at the convention to decide what the issues are. Those 534 politically charged delegates are going to be the ones to decide what it means to reign in government, what it means to have a balanced budget, what it means to have term limits. They're not addressing the issues like I've just defined them here with the Counterman, although they seem to be trying to copy some of that. But the fact is, they are going to have problems just deciding the issues, and then they're going to have to decide how to settle the issues. What are the problems, and how do you provide solutions? Now, I tell you that convention could be a couple of years long. They're already saying that they don't think that they can get the applications done until somewhere at the end of, or maybe the middle of 2017. Well, that's okay, but then they also have the process of the convention to work with, which could take a long, long time. And so what I'm trying to do, and my people are trying to do, is to provide a tool, and the single-issue Countermand Amendment is a tool for the state legislatures to be able to address any issue that they want, one single issue at a time, so it goes through smoothly with the legislatures being the deliberative body in every case. So you could have the Sovereignty Amendment, you could have the Balanced Budget Amendment. We do have one, by the way. You could have the Countermand Amendment. Could have any other amendment. Could be a social issue amendment. Could be a pro-life amendment. The point is that you've got a tool now in which you can do multiple conventions at the same time. There's no limit to the number of conventions you can call or you can apply to. It doesn't have. See, if you have the idea that the only kind of convention that can be called is a constitutional convention, like they argue, and I don't mean just COS, but all of them, they think that it's a dangerous thing because it can become a constitutional convention. When you have that concept in mind, then you can only call one convention, and that is to have a constitutional convention. And that's not correct. That's not under Article 5 proposing amendments. But if you have our single-issue concept, now you can have 5, 6, 10 different amendments going forward at the same time by the states, and we could be addressing a whole host of serious issues that the states have to deal with, one issue at a time.
Charles?
Yes.
Yeah, we're down to about 7 minutes.
Okay.
I have another question. This is clarification. You said you have 4. This is Shelley Hughes again from Alaska. You said you have 4 or 5 states on board looking at moving something forward this next legislative cycle. So are they looking at the Countermand Amendment and or the Sovereignty Amendment, the call for the convention, and the delegate resolution that would go with those?
Shelley, they're just looking at the Countermand Amendment right now. Yeah. We're just starting to plan on introducing the sovereignty here shortly. Maybe within a month we'll have it in the hands of the legislatures.
Okay, so your focus right now is on the Countermand, which I think is probably wise. As I read it, I think that the Countermand is something. The sovereignty, there's a lot of little things in there that some people might have a little more difficulty with, and I think that one is going to be tougher to get through. Just to be.
Well, what we're going to try to, and you're right, by the way, it does have some issues there, especially with controlling voting and things like that. But what we are going to do is ask the delegates to give us their ideas. No, not the delegates, the legislators, to give us their ideas. We have a committee that we're forming. It's the National Strategy Committee for the single-issue amendments. And it'll be governed by the legislators, but the purpose of which is to plan amendments and or creating language for specific amendments that the legislators will decide on. And then by doing that, and we will not be we'll be a facilitator, citizen initiatives. We'll try to offer what services we can to make the process easier and successful between the states, but at the same time, the authority is always going to come from the legislators, not from us.
This is Wes. If Shelley, did you have another one? I have a question I'd like to ask Charles.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's a couple things. One thing first. I think you implied, or maybe you didn't mean to, but Mount Vernon, as I understand it, is not COS. There's two separate initiatives, and COS is involved in both of them. And, the same people, but it's a different initiative.
You're right about that, Wes, and they are not. But some of their language is part of what Senator Long put in his agenda and so forth. Even the word convention of states is in there. And that comes from COS's group, you see, which I don't agree with that either. I call them amendment conventions, you see, rather than convention of states. A different concept, different reasoning that they use to come up with that title.
Yes, I've read the compendium at length, and I agree. The other thing is I wanted to ask you about that I wasn't quite clear on. I think I heard you say that if the governor is involved, that is what that prevents this process in some way, shape, or form. And I'm going to say it as a way of a challenge, but it's a question. I want to know what you're thinking on it. I think that state sovereignty allows the legislature to go ahead and include the governor in the process, in the Article 5 process. And as a parenthetical to that, Mike can get you some more information on this, but we have unfortunately had a state Supreme Court decision up here that requires the governor's signature even on resolutions. Okay,
now, the first part of what you said, Wes, you're absolutely correct. The legislatures can include the governor in anything that they want, including Article 5 resolutions. We do not advise that. What we're saying is that once that happens, now you set a precedent, and it takes some of the authority away from the legislatures. And so what we're trying to do is encourage them to just hold on to Article 5 and do it themselves as a resolution, not requiring the governor's signature. In New Hampshire, where the Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force, who I'd worked with about 3 years ago, and we were in consultation with them on the No Runaway Convention Act. And they were trying to work with me on developing a single-issue amendment convention, but they moved away from it because of the problem that happened in New Hampshire. And that problem was the following. New Hampshire, the legislature approved the Balanced Budget Amendment Convention. That was approved by the legislature. And then they immediately introduced the No Runaway Convention Act. Now, I advised them at that point to make that just a resolution, not to make it a statute or not to make it a bill. And I thought that they were going in that direction. They decided not to. and they made it into an act that the governor had to sign to approve. So that meant that the legislatures in the area of no runaway conventions had to answer to the governor in some fashion. And we were telling the Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force that wasn't the wisest thing to do, because if state legislative authority and sovereignty is in the legislatures alone, then they don't want to surrender. Now, if there's a criminal component to a resolution, let's assume that in our case there is an enforcement clause that allows the state, whether it be your attorney general or someone else, to enforce the provisions against intentional violators, and you have a penalty assigned to that, well, then obviously that's a statute, and the governor has to sign that. I assume the governor does anyway. And so now if someone goes to jail for 5 years, that's based on a statute that you folks have passed. But that's not the issue that I'm concerned about. My issue is just making certain that the legislators understand they have it now. They have a way to reclaim this constitutional republic, and it's going to be through the sovereign authority that they have in Article 5. No one else.
Yeah, thank you. I really do concur with you. I mean, the awareness of state sovereignty and our state sovereignty, the responsibility of the state legislatures has been lost. And it's a process that takes a while to catch on to again.
It does, but I'll tell you this, Wes. It is working though. I don't know. I can't think. Well, no, I can't say that. There are some who have, kind of spit in my face because they didn't like it. But I would say 90% of the people that I talk to, the legislators, they see the wisdom in this and they say, hey, there's something that we're giving up if we do it this other way. And as a result, they are understanding it correctly. There is a movement now among the states that is changing the thinking of the legislators, and we're in that movement. And it deals with state sovereignty, but through the state legislatures. And why do I keep state legislatures? We've had this statement over the years that it's state sovereignty. Well, it is because the state citizens are the ones, as the sovereign voters, decide who is in the legislature. So that sovereignty is passed on, and they assign to the legislatures their deliberative body sovereign status. Okay, that's important. But it's not state rights that we're really protecting here in Article 5. It's state legislative rights that we're protecting, or legislature rights. Right. You see, and that's the difference. And I think we have to be clarifying that frequently in order to get people to understand why that's so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We went to the popular vote on the state senators. That changed the landscape so dramatically that truth, was certainly, hazarded. There's one other thing I'd like to, get your comments on, and I suspect you and Mike have talked about this, but as I understand it, the basis on which we would negate the requirement on Congress to call for a convention, the use of the compact, you kind of implied that the use of the compact, violates that, and I would throw out there that the thing that is in question is whether or not the states do something that challenges the authority that Congress, that in the enumerated rights that we gave Congress, that violate some of those rights. And so the compact process that we passed up here that we use actually incorporates a process, where the Congress is engaged from the very beginning, and their call. We are not, we do not. It does not. What I want to say, presume the call, but it does presume that Congress is engaged in the whole process up to that point.
Got it. Now, just clarify this. The legislatures, from the standpoint of how we look at it, are the final arbiters in all constitutional matters, the state legislatures. That's how we see Article 5. I mean, not only can you introduce amendments, but you ratify them. And if you don't ratify them, they have no effect on the Constitution. So, and then once they're passed, all of the other branches of government have to honor it and even obey it. So you guys are in charge. Now, what I didn't like about the Compact for America, And I do know the DeMosses, by the way, and they're good people. And I know Judge DeMoss, not personally, but I know him through his son. And they're good people, and they're trying hard to find ways to solve things. The only difference, I had no difference with them on trying to advance a single-issue amendment, the balanced budget amendment being the one that they were trying to do. And that I don't have any question about or criticism of that. The only thing that I have been concerned about is that they would establish a precedent whereby in future Article 5 convention applications, you would go through this process, which then ultimately requires 38 states, which in fact means that Congress has some control and the governor has some control in the Article 5 process itself. And we try to avoid that. We try to come to the place where the legislatures alone, as the deliberative body, control it all. And they have that, in my opinion, you guys have that now. And you can do whatever you want in this, within the proposing amendment limitations of Article 5. But at the same time, once you get other factors involved, or agencies, or Congress, or anyone else, you have now diminished your sovereign authority on that. And I'm concerned that the precedent that will be established, if something like that is eventually used to amend the Constitution, the precedent will make it more difficult for you to have Article 5 conventions in the future, especially single-issue ones. And so those are the reasons that I have some problems with CFA.
That creates another question, please. I hope we're not running out of time.
You take your time. Go ahead.
I was under the impression that the year single amendment would take 38 states also.
Yeah, both of them will, but in their case, what they're doing is they're advancing a process that will eventually require 38 states to enter their compact, and then it will require the allowance of Congress to have that compact in agreement between the states. That in itself, by the way, creates some judicial issues that may very well create problems in courts. But even if you got past that, 38 states are needed to ratify. So that's not any different with a single-issue amendment. We need 38 states to ratify an amendment also. And so that it's just that their process is different.
Yes, agreed. Okay. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Oh, I say thank you is all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Wes. I appreciate your insightful comments and questions. Now, Shelley, you had some idea of what you wanted to say a moment ago, and we didn't give you enough time.
Oh no, I'm fine. I'm good. I was just giving the floor to Wes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did Bill Stokes get back? He may have had some problems online. And
I was here and I couldn't get it off mute, but I did. I forget the question from 20, 30 minutes.
Bill?
That's a long time ago for old men like me, anyway.
Bill?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Mike. Kind of going back to your question about this, and I totally understand. We're going to have a lot of legislators, people like Max Gruenberg, who's going to be nitpicking all this stuff right down to the nitnoid sometimes. That 7-page document, actually, when you take out the amendment, it's probably about a 6.5-page document. It really kind of lays out, the methodology that the convention will be run as. I think the biggest issue, at least from my standpoint, is that so long as what we get through that delegate resolution that all 26 or more states, because that way we have our 51% or better majority, would be the first, those whereases in the very beginning. Whereas Article 4, Section 4, Republican Convention, whereas the delegates are ambassadors, whereas, those whereases are probably the most important aspect, and everything else builds upon that. And I think as long as we can get those whereases all the same or very, very, very closely the same, then the breakdown of delegate duties, how to pick the president of the convention, if you guys are going to have a committee within the state legislature that is going to override and oversee what's going on at the convention, those aspects, as long as they're, those can be shortened up. I'm sure the verbiage could be shortened up. A lot of the subparagraphs could be reduced. But as long as they're all having towards that same goal, and the end goal is the same, that it's a majority vote, one state, one vote, and the amendment is attached, and all the amendments are the same, then we control the really actually pretty much control the outcome of the convention. And I know that one of the concerns that I've heard is, well, you could send down a bunch of rhino or a bunch of liberal delegates. Any state legislature could, but if those delegates are going down with that pre-approved amendment and that pre-approved delegate resolution and the oath, they have no choice. They have to vote yes or vote yes on that amendment or come home, one of the two. And if they don't, then they can be recalled. So I think there's some latitude. I think there's a lot of latitude on there. But I think the key issue to me would be those whereases at the very start. That's the building block, the foundation of the whole delegate resolution. Does that make any sense?
Let me interject something, Mike, and I'm going to cut you off just for a minute. I would like you, if you could. By the way, Mike is such a powerful. The word powerful isn't such a great addition to what we are doing. We are very, very proud of him out in Alaska. He's doing an exceptional job with not just your state, but he works in many, many states. So he is really a valuable asset for us. But Mike, the other guests that are planning to come on board, try to give them a call just to see if they're close to coming on board, so we don't cut off the Alaskans.
I was just fixing to do that because I know.
And then call me. Interrupt the call when you do, so we can know when they're coming on board, and we can close this one out.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I want to go back to the concept of deliberative status. The biggest criticism that I have received from those that oppose delegate resolutions, I did ask, by the way, the COS people if they would approve, their top people, if they would approve a delegate resolution. They said no. And the reason is because they see the delegate as an independent agent. Their understanding of who the delegate is totally different. But the criticism that has often come back to us is, oh, you're trying to force this down the throats of the states. And here's my answer. No, we're not. If the states are the deliberative body, if the states are the groups that, the agencies that can decide how to organize a convention and how to conduct an Article 5 convention, and if all the 50 states have an equal opportunity in presenting their ideas in a forum that will allow a single issue amendment to be approved and a delegate resolution, corresponding delegate resolution at the same time, and there are 26 states that approve it, everyone's had a chance to participate. But if you go with the concept that you have to have delegates to go, and that they are the free agents that decide these matters, then you don't need the deliberative body in the legislatures. But my response to their criticism is that your logic is flawed. The fact is the legislatures make the decisions, and they decide how to design the convention and the conditions for the delegates. And for that reason, you're not throwing anything down the throats of other states. Everybody has an equal chance to make an opportunity. That was the big question, again, at the Constitutional Convention. The bigger states wanted to throw down the throats of the little states that votes at the convention should be by popular vote, the populations. And, of course, that was a contentious thing, but it had to be dealt with. And when they settled it, now the states all agreed that they would resolve their differences through a Republican form of government, which eventually was added in Article 4, Section 4. So I wanted to explain that. You're not, by doing this with a deliberative body, you're simply saying we're not letting the delegates be the deliberative body. We are the deliberative body, and then we, through our leadership as elected representatives of a sovereign citizen who has brought me into this office to perform a task to do the work of for my state, we will deliberate these matters in such a way whereby the outcome will be all 50 states will have a chance to decide the matter individually. And collectively, once the vote takes place, whether it be 26 or 38 delegate resolutions approved for the amendment, all of a sudden you have a very successful convention, and you still have some states that are outside. But that would have been the same with the delegates at a convention. There's still going to be delegates at the convention representing their states that won't like the decisions of the convention. So, and that certainly was the case with the constitutional conventions. There were many that voted against their states, the states'
Charles?
decisions. Yes. Yes.
Can I interject real quick? Zeta, are you still there?
No, that's the problem. Zeta is gone.
Okay. Because I got Kurt McKinsey. He's been trying to get through, but he hasn't had any luck.
All right. Well, that's because she apparently she got very ill, by the way, just before the program started, and she's our producer, and she's out of Florida.
Trying. So we had a problem with that earlier, and I know Shelley got through finally. Our producer ended up coming down with a major migraine headache, so she had to back away. But it's all computerized, so.
Yeah, but unfortunately, right now there are some connection problems, and those connection problems.
And but you don't have Skype, do you?
I have Skype, but it wouldn't matter anyway because the audience wouldn't be able to hear it by reconnecting on Skype. Right now, the audience is supposedly hearing this unless something is going wrong out there too. I hope not. Actually, it's been a good discussion, and I appreciate the fact that we got to know these legislators as we have. But I am very concerned that we may have had some technical problems that cost us several hours of work tonight that wasn't as effective as we wanted. If it was, we will certainly have a separate night set up just for Alaska, and we will redo this and allow you guys to participate a second or third time even. But at any rate, right now, I don't know how to get them into the call, Mike, and we just may have to end this conference here after we get done with Alaska, and then reschedule.
This is Shelley. I'm going to have to get off. I want to let you know and to thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing the conversation, and I'll be in touch with Mike Coons, too, and get that updated Countermand Amendment. And I see the website where I can get it, too. But I am going to have to sign off, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate so much your participation.
Bye-bye now.
All right. Wes, did you have any other comments before we come to a close on this meeting?
Just to say thank you. Thank you. It's very informative and helpful, and it solidifies answers to questions that need to be asked. So thank you.
Thank you. I often make this analogy. I said, look, when I'm the CEO of a company, and I take my vice president and I pull him over and I said, look, I want you to do such and such a task, and I assign it to him, and then he looks at me and he says, wait a minute, I don't know if I approve. And I look at him and I say, wait a minute, what do you mean you don't approve? I didn't ask you for permission. You just do it. He says, no, I don't know if I like the idea. And I guess what I'm gonna do. I'm the sovereign. I fire him.
Do we fire the Congress?
Yeah, well, you don't have to fire the Congress, but you can exercise control through Article 5 because you are the sovereign, you see.
I agree, yes.
So that's an analogy that I often make. How about you, Bill? Did you want to add one more thing before we close out?
Well, I want to say thanks, and I'm going to continue to study this. I like the idea of having some way to let the revolts in the states that are ready to transpire have an avenue, and this looks like a good one.
Well, and Citizen Initiatives plans to be a facilitator for you folks for a long term. There's going to be a lot of coordination that has to be done through the legislators in one way or another, and then through this National Planning Committee, who we will invite you guys to be part of. You'll have some input there at that level as well, and be able to help us organize it so we can get these applications completed. Remember that when 34 states complete the application for the Countermand Amendment, Congress has no choice anymore. If you go to the website, at the bottom of the front page on the left, there's a letter. It's called an introductory letter to state legislators. Go there, read that letter, and you will see some quotes in that letter from men like Iredale. I think it's James Iredale. He was one of our first Supreme Court justices. And what he said was that Congress has no discretion once 34 states make the call. But now Congress does have a problem. And I guess I should qualify this. I wish Shelley were on, we could have addressed it with her. The problem that Congress has is they have taken an oath to protect the Constitution. And if they analyze Article 5 properly, they will understand that it's for proposing amendments, not for usurping the Constitution. So if an application comes from the states that is so sweeping that they see that it will that could put the Constitution in jeopardy, I think Congress under such a circumstance could say, no, we won't convene this convention. I think that's a possibility. That's an opinion of mine. But at the same time, if it's a single issue convention, well defined, with the same text in the call for the applications from the different states, the same text for the applications for this call from the different states, if that goes forward and 34 states or more complete that application, Congress has no quarrel with you. You're proposing an amendment. And you're no longer in a contentious relationship with them. They can't stop you at that point. That's why it's a single issue amendment. Does that make sense?
If I could, that makes a lot of sense. That's exactly the premise on which the balanced budget amendment or the compact approach uses.
It is, and for that reason, I like their single issue approach. I have no question about that. It's only the process that I'm concerned about. But at any rate, listen, folks, I don't want to keep you on for any longer. We're going to call this, because of our producer being sick, and we're going to call this meeting to a close. And as soon as I assess what happened tonight, as far as our technical problems are concerned, I will get back to Mike or I will get back to you, and we'll either reschedule something so you can have other legislators come on board along with yourself, or we'll give you a copy of what went on tonight. But if it didn't work out, we'll correct it somehow.
Charles?
Thank you.
Yes.
Charles? I even tried calling in, and it's not picking up at all.
Okay. Well, we've got a problem, and I'm so sorry.
I got Marv Hagedorn and Kurt McKenzie both listening to us on the PNN radio.
Radio. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both listening in, but
well,
they just have a hard time getting in.
What we'll have to do is call it. We'll have to terminate this call. Wish our guests well, and then reschedule this thing at some point, and maybe there'll be even more legislators who want to participate. And then maybe what we can do, fellas, is give you guys maybe the whole 3 hours for Alaska. You see, one night that's just for your state.
Idaho. For Idaho. Idaho's the ones we're missing.
Right, but I'm saying the people that are who we've been talking to tonight, they may, the fact is that they may find themselves. We may not even have a broadcast recorded tonight. That's my point. And all of this is the case. Then what we can do is we'll try to work something out to give them extended time, and then they can bring more people into the conversation from their legislature. Yeah,
that's what you're saying there. But Senator Hagedorn and Senator McKenzie, I know I've been trying to get hold of Representative Crane without luck. But we've got Hawaii supposed to be coming up as well at the top of the hour as well. So I don't know.
There's no way that we could wait for that. Not at this point.
We're going. I don't know what we're going to do unless we can just.
Well, we're just going to terminate the call and the broadcast, and then assess it.
Well, do you want to just terminate this, or we can have? So I got Senator.
No, Mike, I think we need to terminate it because Zita can't help us. Yeah. She's the one that controls the board, and she's not there. And we've got equipment running, but no one's monitoring it.
Well, let me give Senator Sloan a call in Hawaii and let him know. we'll have to reschedule him as well.
Yes, we will.
And then we'll get the Senator Hagedorn and McKenzie and Representative Crane on another night. Maravik, we still have that third hour open for the 17th, so we could probably get Idaho in there on that third hour.
Well, we can change our schedule around too. It'll work out. Let's settle that when we get off the phone. All right, okay. Folks, I want to thank all of you for participating. I'm sorry for the mishap here tonight, but at the same time, I'm grateful for your comments and questions, and I look forward to chatting with you guys one more time.
Good night. Thank you, Mark.
Good night now.
Bye.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Wes.
Yep.
Okay.